Oh, hey, PS1. Huh. You look a little bit smaller. Did you lose weight?
Actually, I'm the PS1 Classic, although you could call me by my nickname, Mini. The PS1 is my brother. Yeah, Matt-kun, I'm the PS1, don't you remember? We used to be such good nakama back in the day. We played all those cool JRPGs together, Desu.
Yeah, I've had you since the 90s, and we mostly played action-adventure games and like one JRPG.
Yeah, Legend of Dragoon. It really resonated with me because it made sure to reflect my kokoro and my tamashi together at once, Desu.
Yeah.
What can you say about the PS1 Mini that hasn't already been said? Is it as bad as people made it out to be? Is it painfully average? Or is it the best mini console that has ever existed? Well, it's none of these, which I guess is a good thing. Although I am getting a little bit ahead of myself, so let's backtrack a bit. If you don't know, in response to all of the fanfare surrounding the NES and SNES Classic Editions by Nintendo, Sony released the PS1 Mini. There has been a lot of controversy surrounding this Mini, which really makes it hard to go into this with an open mind, but I did my best. Before getting my hands on this, the news cycle was filled with mentions of the PS1 Mini having poor emulation due to including an emulator that you can literally download online, and that certain games were PAL and not NTSC, despite this being the NTSC version. What that means is that the refresh rate would be slower than the NTSC versions, and mixing that with the HDMI output and potential emulation lag, this could end up being a complete mess. While I can't confirm the legitimacy of which emulator was used, I can say that the PAL situation is true, but more on that later. First, let's set it up. The PS1 Mini comes with two USB-based controllers that are both a bit on the light side and also do not have DualShock analog. Also, it comes with an HDMI cable and a power cord, but no brick on the end of it. Thankfully, you can use any one that you have lying around, and you can even use your smart TV, although I have not had any success with that myself. I prefer using the Nintendo branded one that came with my Classic Editions because it makes me giggle. I am a child. Also, if you weren't aware, the PS1 Mini comes with 20 preloaded PS1 games, but no way to add on PS1 games in the future. The list of games are Battle Arena Toshinden, Cool Borders 2, Destruction Derby, Final Fantasy VII, Grand Theft Auto, Intelligent Cube, Jumping Flash, Metal Gear Solid, Mr. Driller, Oddworld Abe's Odyssey, Rayman, Resident Evil Director's Cut, Revelations Persona, R4 Ridge Racer Type 4, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, Siphon Filter, Tekken 3, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, Twisted Metal, and Wild Arms. Before turning the console on, I want to let you know that the yellow light is normal and actually looks orange in person. This is not a yellow light of death. So, moving on, when turning on the console, a variation of the original start screen pops up, and it allows us to choose any language we want right off the bat. After that, a console button guide pops up. This is actually more useful than you might think, because I thought the reset could restart the console itself, and that open could swap disks, or swap ISOs, or swap games without going to the main menu. But really you need it more for Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid. And then after that, we are greeted to a menu that is straight out of the original PS1. Some have said that it is a bit too minimalist, but I actually enjoy it a lot. Sadly, there is no music, just an eerie silence, and the only noise you hear is when you move the cursor to another game. Having music play from each game, even just one track, definitely should have been a default feature. Scrolling down, we see Settings, Guide, Memory Card, and Resume Point. Settings has Health and Safety, Screensaver, which just dims the screen after 5 minutes, Language, Power Save Settings, Restore Default Settings, Initialize Console, which is just a fancy way of saying to reformat the whole thing, and a Legal Notice. Woo! Guides just has the product website and the console button guide again. The memory card is just that, a virtual memory card. But clicking on it might give you a sense of deja vu. Yes, that's right, Sony replicated the exact format of the original memory card menu. So even with some of the issues this thing had, someone did care. But that still doesn't mean it's perfect. One issue I had is that it takes a little while to load when trying to save a game, which can really freak you out when you're trying to save for the first time. Another is that it only saves the game in the memory card under the game itself. So instead of seeing Cloud hanging out next to an avatar from Persona, they're just off on their own little islands. And it is time consuming to go back and forth. Replicating the menu is great, don't get me wrong, but the space should have been used as well. The resume point, as you can tell, is a save state, plain and simple. My issue is that you only get one. Technically, it makes sense because the resume point would never override the memory card, and most of the games have multiple save slots, but for a game like Persona, multiple resume points would do wonders. Before we jump to some critique of how the games run, as you guys can tell, I have been splicing in some gameplay footage as the review has been going on, and you can see that there are these black borders surrounding it. They aren't there due to my capture device, nor are they there because I chose a default border instead of a better one, because as you guys saw earlier, there are no border options. Now, this isn't a deal breaker, it's just odd. They could have easily taken the menu screen and copy-pasted it over, or if they thought the colors would blend in too much, could have just used the angelic white from the startup screen. Even if it's small, it just feels like it's lacking a certain pizzazz. So, let's move on to what you've all been waiting for, gameplay critique. So, when loading up Tekken 3, you can see that, yes, it is the PAL version, but does that really affect gameplay? Well, for me, I didn't notice a difference at all. It could be my TV doing some internal conversion to make things look a little bit better, but the frame rate issue didn't seem apparent to me while playing the game, both in how the game was presented and how it played. Yes, I got thrashed while taking on Jin at stage 7, but it is Jin at stage 7. You know, this is a good time to make use of resume points. As you can see, it saves immediately. So let me try that again. Okay, never mind. Using the feature again, as you can see, it automatically asks if you want to save over your resume. And I will. My loss fills me with shame. Now, I know what you're thinking. Really, Matt? You're only going to try one PAL game? Well, no, I'm not. And you don't know me. You're not my real dad. Next up is Battle Arena Toshinden. This game definitely had issues that could have been attributed to it being a PAL game, but it also could have sucked. Which does beg the question, why is this on the PS1 Mini? I know it was a launch title, heck, I own the demo disc that this game is hidden on, but this really took up a slot? You know what, I will be fair though. Once I got used to the controls, the game did suck less. And yes, that is a compliment. Jumping Flash is another PAL game, and while I don't have experience with it, the controls seemed hard to handle due to the large amounts of first-person 3D, not necessarily due to it being PAL. Once I got the hang of it, it was pretty fun. Although, I can't shake the feeling of being slightly dizzy. Let's talk about one more PAL game before moving on, Resident Evil Director's Cut. I've played bits and pieces of the original Resident Evil throughout the years, and other than the quality of the FMV footage, which I'll get to later, the game did not really seem to be affected from being PAL. With how focused I was on being absolutely terrified, if the game did have any issues, it was hard to notice. So, fair warning, it really does feel like a mixed bag with some of these PAL games. Originally, I heard that there were only 6, and while that was upsetting, I thought, well, you know, with 6, that it could be worse, it could be more than 6, and the problem is, while it is less than half of the games on the system, it's not 6, it's 9. You heard me right, 9 games on this system are PAL. Even 1 is too many, and 9 is way too many. I'll give you the list of games right now. There's Battle Arena Toshinden, Cool Borders 2, Destruction Derby, Grand Theft Auto, Jumping Flash, Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, Resident Evil Director's Cut, Tekken 3, and Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six. You might be wondering why any of the games here would be PAL in the first place. Well, one theory that was floating around is that they wanted a version with a bunch of different languages, and those are usually available in PAL versions more so than NTSC versions. Licensing issues could be a problem as well. Gon's Tekken 3 cameo isn't in the PAL version, and billboards or licensed tracks could have also been changed in other games. When looking at some of the other games on this, none of the emulation seems poor except for one game in particular, and that's Rayman. Now, I never played the original Rayman, so maybe it is this slow, but the titular character feels like he's drowning in quicksand, and it also begs the question, why is this one on the classic? Sony had to have the opportunity to test these games before licensing them, so why choose this one if it's going to make people question the emulation as a whole? Although now that it comes to mind, there actually was another game on this list that I noticed may have had some emulation issues, and it actually wasn't a PAL game. It was Twisted Metal. So, I was never really a fan of Twisted Metal, but the controls were janky as hell. I know this game is supposed to be monster trucks on steroids, but one really has to wonder if it's the game itself or shoddy emulation. And that really isn't a question that we should be asking. And for a game like Metal Gear Solid, I'm so happy I get to play this game again because my dad loved it when it first came out, and it reminds me of him. But the game had an anti-piracy measure where code in the game is located on the back of the jewel case. Shouldn't there be a JPEG on the system itself to indicate this? I know that we have the internet to help us out with stuff like this, but if I didn't know about that going into this, then I'd just be wondering where a code is in a game and I'd have no idea that it was on a jewel case that I don't own. Another issue I have, which is a much larger one, is the controller input. It doesn't lag, which is nice, but sometimes when pressing the down button, the left or right trigger gets pushed as well, which is exactly the thing you want to happen to you during gameplay. And with no ways to use a USB-based controller as of this time, it is frustrating to say the least. One of the last issues I had with this console was nearly one I was going to overlook due to thinking that it could be based around hardware limitations, but it should still be noted either way. Why is there no smoothing or light upscaling option? Even if Sony didn't want to change the way the games look overall, why do I have to see cutscenes at this resolution over HDMI without the ability to even make it look a bit better? I'm not looking for Blu-ray quality here, but just something better than this. So, should you buy the PS1 Mini? Well, monetarily, you are getting a good deal when looking at how expensive some of these games can be online. But if you're just getting it to experience one game like Final Fantasy, Metal Gear Solid, or Tekken 3, then I would suggest trying to buy them online instead, especially at its current $100 price point. If you're someone who is a hardcore fan that already has most of these games, then this is a hard pass unless there is a major price cut. If you're buying this for a newer fan, then I definitely think they won't notice the difference, but at $100, it definitely dips out of the range for a typical impulse buy or an inexpensive birthday/Christmas gift. There was so much potential here, and it's sad to see so much of it squandered. Sure, this isn't the worst mini console out there, and it definitely isn't the best, but it just exists. And in a way, that might be worst of all. I give the PS1 Mini 2.5 out of 5
I'm sorry about my brother. He's so embarrassing. Even though he's the older one, I feel like I'm responsible for him wherever I go.
No. Hey man, come on, look, listen. I know you think that you're responsible for your brother, but you're not your brother's keeper, okay?
Really?
That's right. A boy has the right to dream. There are endless possibilities stretched out before him. You have to trust in your own power. Whatever happens from now on, you stand firm and face your destiny. Not with fear, but with courage. What awaits him down the path, he will then have to choose. No one's going to give you a map. You have to walk your own path.
You're quoting Toonami, aren't you? You're quoting Toonami, aren't you?
That I am, and that I am.
I should have known that you were so into anime, Desu. Now we can talk about the fact that Outlaw Star is better than Cowboy Bebop.
I'm sorry, Nani, the what?
Look, Matt-kun, sometimes it's okay to not be naruhodo about things, but you have to understand that right now, what you're doing, your reasoning, it's bakana. Outlaw Star reflects Japanese-ness, Nihongo-ness, so much more than Cowboy Bebop. And I'm not saying that Cowboy Bebop isn't good, it's just that Outlaw Star is the best anime that has been ever made. I'm surrounded by weeaboos.